Right now we're doing a quick tutorial on the quarter border feather, the curling feather. Not the curling Amish feather that we did a tutorial on last week. This one's a little bit different, a little simpler, but sometimes it's a design that will look better rather than choosing the curling feather, and I'll show you why now. The particular border that we're looking at right now is 4 inches wide. And rather than put a curling Amish feather, and I could if I used tiny circles to do my drawing, instead of that though I'd rather do this a little bit simpler, more of a frame around the quilt type of lazy curling Amish feather type border. I'm still going to put the curling feathers in the corner and also at the middle where both sides meet, and I want to show you how to mark that out first. The first mark I'm going to make is going to be in the center of the width of the border, and remember on this border you want to make sure to find the center of all 4 sides before you load your quilt. I've chalked the center and I've actually already marked the left side, and now I'll show you how to mark the right side. So that's mark number 1. Mark number 2 is over here in the corner. I'm going to put a miter line from the corner of the body to the outer edge of the quilt. I'm then going to locate the center here and put a registration mark. Now I know that my border is 4 and a half inches, so I actually did 4 inches because I left and will leave a 1/4 inch for my binding space. So I'm going to go 2 inches, find my little center mark there, and then I'm going to put a chalk line 1/4 inch around the edge of the quilt, so that way I know I don't want to go past that with my design work. Leave a little room for your binding, and that way it won't cut the design off. The next mark I'm going to make is a location between the width of the border. So since it's 4 inches, I just want to put a couple registration lines 2 inches out. So I'm going to line up my 2 inch. And instead of making a solid line, because I don't really need one for this, I'm just going to put a few registration marks. Slide down, line it up at 2 inches. There. Now this next measurement might be different. Now notice in the center, here's where I have my center mark, I'm 1 inch away with my flip up curl on the other side that I've already marked. So on this side, I'm going to choose 1 inch because this border is a bit narrow. I'm just going to put a little registration line 1 inch in here. I know my center's right here. I'm going to line up my 2 inch circle. What's that called, Rich? That's called a crosshair, which I really like to do, vertical and horizontal. I'm going to do a 3/4 circle right around, and I try to flip mine out towards the outside for this particular design. So I've got that circle marked. Now I'm going to use that small circle again over here in the corner, and I'm going to line up those crosshairs right on that center registration mark, and I'm going to do again a 3/4 circle, and since this is etched here at 4/4, I can start here, go around to this line, and I have 3/4 circle. I have put a piece of blue tape here because I know that this part of the curve right here is what I'm actually going to use. I'm going to line up this center mark in the border right with that tape registration mark, and I'm just going to come down and back to this center, and then I'm going to flip the ruler, go up to the center again to make that nice mellow wave to go across to the center. Flip it again, slide it right up to that line, and remember I'm starting right on the middle mark between that border. I'm lining up my tape with this line, sliding it up there, mark. Come back around. And notice now, I've only got room for about one, but there's a little extra room here. There's some give. So I'm going to locate the center, line that up on the center, and leave a little extra room on each side just to kind of fudge it. So I line that up, and then I'm just going to kind of fudge it to right there, follow that ruler around, and then down so that that flips up to the outer edge of the quilt. So now I have this bottom portion marked. I have my throat space here, and I am working up from the bottom of the quilt because I've already done the top half earlier. And again, I'm going to locate my centers, which is about 2 inches out. Just a couple registration lines is all I need. Okay. And then I'm going to slide my ruler down. I want to remember, coming out of the circle in the corner, the ruler slides down. Give it just a little bit more flow. Line that up with that half line. Slide my ruler over just a little bit. Flip it in. Go over here. Again, I'm lining this part of my tape with that center registration line. Ta-da! And there we go. And that's as far as I can mark there. So now what we have on the bottom, we'll do a pan of the border. We have the center, and from the corner, which is where we're going to start from when we actually sew, and we're going to come out, follow that nice curve, do a flip feather, come all the way back, feather it all the way back, and then feather back and complete that all the way to the center line. And then we'll flip and do the other side as well. Okay, so now to quilt this out, I have dropped my needle right down at the top of the head of that circle out towards the outer edge, and I've locked my thread, and I start off with that figure 8, and I'm going to do a figure 8 up and come down right to the middle point, that registration line. And let me reset my cruise here. And I am using Superior metallic thread, and I tend to vacillate between Superior metallic and YLI metallic because I like both of them, and it just depends on what color I need. So I'm back up at that registration line. I'm now going to come all the way down, follow that spine. If I don't hit the chalk line exact, I don't care. They're not going to see the chalk line. And the human eye is going to automatically correct, let me slide down here a little bit, what any of my little mistakes. Won't correct the big ones, but the human optic nerve will correct the little ones. So I'm going to do my flip in, come around with my feather fronds, I'm way around to the back of the head. I only want to put about 2 or 3 fronds in the center of that hook. Now I start stretching those fronds out to the edge of the border, and I'm going to throw in some veins. Double bump, vein, double bump, vein, and I'm going to work my way all the way back to the circle at the corner of this border. Now sometimes the key as you're working your way back down that border is to really curve that frond, the bump, back and around, rather than come in at a straight angle and then they start to turn into daisy petals that are sticking straight out. Okay, now I'm coming back and I'm feathering towards that figure 8. Bump, back, and the top of those double bumps is just a nice smooth little arc. Go bump, back, And almost back to the figure eights. Slide that last one in, lay it right in, and now I head up. Go right to that miter line. Lay the next feather, go right to the miter line. Right to the miter line. Then I go right to the edge between the border and the body of the quilt. We have a lot of different versions of feathers on the Mystical Feathers book, and that one we'll have an accompanying DVD fairly soon here, and this is going to be one of the designs in that book. Lay it in, and I'm heading back towards the hook at the middle of the border. Lay it in, and around. Back, really come back down that spine. Okay, now I'm coming right up to that hook shape that's at the middle of the border. Coming around, and I'm going to meet my little feather fronds right there in the center of that border. And I'm going to put a few fancy schmancy feathers in there. You like it? Fancy schmancy. We're all classy here. Come up, go into the corner. I want to make sure not to cross that chalk line and go into my binding space. This is not a design you want to cut off. Come back, and then I backtrack all the way back to where that first or second feather meets the spine. And then that way you don't have this obvious place that you've cut. Going to cut thread, and then we're going to mirror it from the other side. Now I have locked my threads at the same place in the mirroring corner, because that's where we start. We go into our figure eight, down toward the middle there, up towards the outer edge, and then we go down with our spine. Follow that curve. I'm going to go into my hook, flip in there nice and deep, get that first feather frond, swing it around towards the back of the head of that hook, come around, come around. Inside hooks I tend to go ahead and use traditional feather fronds, and then if I want to switch, which I am on this one, to a different feather, and I'm doing that double bump feather, leather, with a vein, come up, the bump, real lazy, ba-bump, and head back towards that figure eight, just like we did on the opposite side. Now I'm coming towards the center of that border. Go in, throw in a couple fancy feathers, or not, whatever you prefer. I'm just going to kind of mirror that to the opposite side. Come around. Close that little guy off. Come around, and again I'm going to go down to about that second feather where the inner feather makes connection with the spine. Lock my threads. Pick up my bobbin. Snip. That's the proper way, which I rarely do. Okay, so now we're going to go up both sides as far as we can within this throat space. Now that I've finished the parallel horizontal edge, now I'm going to go up vertically. And so I'm going to start here right in that figure 8, lock my threads, and do the same thing. I'll only go part way up and do my feathers back. And as I work my way up, or whether you work your way down, however you choose to do it, you're just going to do the throat space, one throat space at a time until it's completed up to the middle. Now, what happens a lot of times is I will start at the top, which I did on this quilt. I did the top border and then I came down the sides because I had a mark in the middle. And then I didn't complete the bottom border, but I did the body of the quilt, came down to the bottom, and what we just filmed was the bottom of the quilt. And now I'm heading back up towards that middle. I tend to be a little lazy on the turning the quilt to do the sides horizontally. And eventually, you know, if you're not there yet, you will be able to get there. You know, those little shortcuts we do to save a little bit of time. We're locked right in the middle of the figure 8. Follow my spine. Flip out my first feather, come back. Make sure my little vein in that feather frond follows the contour that I want it to. And it'll take the attention off if I didn't get that first feather frond at the right angle. And I always make sure my veins are in the right angle, and that will doctor up anything that I've messed up. Start flipping it back around towards that figure 8. Flip, vein, outside, and I'm going to go right up to that chalk line, which is where the binding is going to go to. I really enjoy using the metallic threads on black. It looks really nice, especially with this being a wall hanging. I don't have a lot of fear with the metallic threads. I think as long as you wash them properly and you use a nice, good quality metallic like a Superior or a YLI, you're going to be in the ballpark. And I'm sure there's many more different brands out there that are very good. Those are the ones that I'm used to using. Okay, now that's as far as I can go in that throat space. I'm going to flip over, do the other side, and keep rolling my quilt up towards the center. And then we're going to go ahead and flash to a picture here of the finished progress.